to my Oh, hello and welcome. I am so excited because today, another one of my favorite people I get to interview, who is one of the best online tutors that is out there. And Jessica Pezold has been tutoring kids that are struggling with English language arts in high school specifically. And she's also started her own tutoring business where it's more than just English. Her husband actually helps out in the business as well, and he does the math side of things. So she has a company called Jpez Tutoring, and you're going to get to learn all about Jessica today. Jessica is also featured in our professional directory for online tutors. And if you're looking for additional information about that directory and how you can be added to it, you can just click inside of the link so that you can be added. And one of the benefits of being able to be in the directory is not only do lots of people get to know who you are, but people also get the opportunity to network with each other. So it's a wonderful opportunity for other tutors to get to know other tutors. So, oh, so I'm going to just start off welcoming you to the call. Welcome, Jessica.
Yeah, Joanne, thanks. And good morning to you.
Good morning to you as well. So tell me, what was learning like for you as a child, Jessica?
I really preferred reading and writing over anything else. I mean, I think that as long as my friends were there with me, it was very friend based, like for a while, I didn't have a younger sister until like we were 5 years apart. So when I was really little, I liked going to kindergarten with friends, and I kind of wanted to either do what my friends are doing or compete with my friends. So I think that's how you learned. If one friend could read better than me, well, I had to fix that. I was like, oh, I want to definitely learn, catch up with them or surpass them. And I remember just a lot of books in my life. There were books all over the place, library books, of course, children's books with pictures in them. And my parents read to me, and I'm just thankful that was just like a major part of my life. And I really didn't do a lot of, there weren't a lot of distractions back then. I think as the first child, my parents were like, we're not going to over involve her. We're going to make sure that she does. I mean, they just did what they knew, which was like put some books in front of her, read to her, tell stories. Like they liked giving me like art supplies in school. So with that said, I was not very strong in math and science because my parents were more on the humanitarian side. So math was a struggle for me. So I dreaded going to math class. I left going to my English classes, which makes sense because I teach English now. So I mean, it's very empowering when you understand everything, no matter what the subject area is. But I just remember like once I think I had one of my first math teachers, she spoke really fast and I couldn't keep up. So it's like ever since then, I felt kind of like I lacked confidence in math for years. And it's funny because now I'm like, oh well, I enjoy doing my own like business math, but that was it. It was like I dreaded math class, and then the reading and writing. That was pretty much what made sense to me.
I love it. I love it. And sometimes people they kind of gravitate towards like what they're just naturally really good at. And some people want to help people because they struggle. So you're already naturally really good at that area of the English language arts and surrounded yourself with books and that was your passion area. And then when you graduated high school, what did you decide to major in college?
Well, I was indecisive. That's what I try to help people now is like figure out what you do want to do, or not so much that it's like you have to try new things. And I wasn't really afraid to try new things. I was just very inexperienced. So
Mhm.
going in college, I was told, well, you're good at that's another thing. If you're good at something, that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to become a career. Like you do have to have some type of clarity, or if not, you have to try things. So I was told you're good with writing, you should be a journalist. Well, I didn't know what a journalist was, right? So at my school, there was no like journalism major. Instead, they had something called mass communications, which meant you could get a number of jobs because you could learn how to do the like the news industry. You could be a reporter there. You could write for a newspaper, which everybody said you might not want to. That might not pay enough, but at least start doing that. So I worked for like my campus news station and like learn how to make videos and edit. So I got pretty good at interviewing people, but I was still kind of fixated on I have to get good grades. It's hard to move from getting the grade and passing the test to I need life experience. I need job experience. So I mean, that was a hard transitioning into adulthood was really hard for me because I still wanted to I was so used to being told what to do.
Mhm.
And I think that's what's hard. I'm a completely very different person than I was back then. Back then, you're just naive and you're just like, somebody just give me the right path and I'll take it. So,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm glad I went through it, but I think I was always envious of the ones who knew what they wanted to do because I'm like, I don't know, I just want some type of job where I can read and write a lot. But then I don't know, I was interested in a lot of things and I ended up going into teaching, long story short. And then I'm like, well, I can do this, but it was a whole nother path.
Yeah, it was a whole nother path. And so you ended up landing into teaching and then you graduated with your teacher's license.
Yeah, I actually when I enrolled in a program where I could get my master's degree and like teaching certification all at once. So this was
Okay.
when actually it was like one of the worst times in my life. Like I graduated high school in '09. There were no jobs available. I was like, I
Mhm.
actually thought of this earlier this morning. I remember like cold calling companies saying, "Are you hiring?" I just needed something like public relations. Can go and work in like the news studio, like doing something, and everyone's like, no. Or they wanted you they had job postings, but it was like you need 10 years of experience. And it was the cycle of I can't get a job without experience, but you know what I mean? Like, how does it go?
Yeah.
I can't get a job without experience, but I can't get experience without getting a job. So I was really frustrated. And so I finally was like, well, my mom was a teacher. That's literally all I understood growing up. So let me try this for a while, at least get started and I can teach for a while. And so I did. And I met friends that way. And it was like a well-worn path, but it wasn't something I really like being in the classroom. Like I spent all of my life as a student. I don't really want to go back there, but we'll see if it's doable. And it ended up being just a very challenging and useful learning experience. So I would not have this business today. I wouldn't be tutoring. I wouldn't have the ideas I have now if it weren't for going through that difficult time.
Yeah, I know. Teaching was some of my most difficult time as well, teaching in the classroom and tutoring has just completely changed my life around. So how did you end up starting tutoring?
So it was the last year I was teaching. It was just, it's kind of funny a little bit. I would like getting up early, getting ready, driving to the building that was like literally like a roach infested building that everyone tried to act like it wasn't, but like you pull books off the shelf and like bugs would skitter scatter across the floor and the kids would have to like scream and go after it and kill it for you. And just like it was a distracting environment. And like I wanted so badly to work. I'm like, I would say, I want to work with these kids one-on-one or in really small groups, but I can't do it. How do I
Mhm.
do it? You have zero control as a teacher. I mean, there are people out there who it works out for them. They've got
Mhm.
it. But I was dissatisfied. But I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, but it's a job. I remember what it's like to not have one, and that's no fun because you have no opportunity.
Yeah.
So that last year I knew I was leaving. And so I think it was one of the last meals we had in the cafeteria, there was a parent there subbing. And I told her, yeah, I'm going to start a tutoring business. And she said, oh, I'd love for my son to get tutored. He's finishing sixth grade here and he's a little bit, he could have some work. And I was scared to death. I'm like, Oh, yeah, yeah. And so we arranged to meet at the local Starbucks. And I was like, I guess she gave me like $20 because I had no idea. I'm like, just pay me $20. And that kid still has my book, by the way, because I brought a paperback from one of my shelves and we worked it out a little. But over time, I just got more experienced and more organized. I was like, I can teach, but managing people, like telling people, meet me here. This is what you owe me. Here's our schedule. I'm like, that's a whole nother part of me it was unlocked,
Yeah.
had to be developed.
Yes, yes, but you definitely did end up developing that and you moved online. What helped you make that transition between in person to online?
That was like the big obstacle I knew I needed to do because when I guess in school you only use computers to a certain extent, so I'm like, I've never instructed because this was before COVID, so I wasn't in the classroom during COVID to like be forced to learn how to do online work, like teaching, that is. So let's see, I found a few clients. I found one family of, you probably know this already, I was working with a homeschool family who fortunately they introduced me to this curriculum that I still find people who want that curriculum, the Michael Clay Thompson, the English language arts. So I was driving to their house and it made me feel like I still had a sense of I can teach to them, and that worked out. But I thought, I don't want to have to drive forever. And so when COVID started happening, like many people, we said, oh, we can't meet. Can we try on Zoom? Okay. So we tried on Zoom. And this was when I found you and Jumpstart and everything. And so I kept hearing you and other people say, oh, you want to go online? It's much better. And I thought, yeah, but there's all these doubts about online education. Like I used to think people who got their degrees online, like it wasn't the same. So I thought, how could I possibly be doing that? Because yes, there is value in being in person. There's certain things that like it is, it's nice and it feels, it works, but as far as like your personal relationships and like, maybe a couple students, but for the most part, if I was like, I love to reach people from all over the country, all over the world. I've got to be comfortable with an online platform. So
Mhm.
I just started asking more and more people, hey, let's try online. Let's meet online. How do you like this? And I would show them how organized I was and show them here are the resources that work. And actually, people were willing to try it. And they weren't too comfortable with being in person for, there was that season of people just not wanting to leave a house or like all that confusion. So it just made sense. People got more used to working from the computer. And I was glad because I was barely driving anymore. I was
Yeah.
like, good. I don't miss, because nobody lives close. Yeah, I had people from all these different neighborhoods. I was like, I remember one time I had to like, I think somebody else had the same thing. Like they had to lesson plan and eat lunch in their car in between houses. And I'm like, this better than being in the classroom? It's supposed to be. I don't think we're quite there yet.
Yeah.
So mm.
Yeah, that definitely doesn't seem like a better solution necessarily. So who is your ideal student?
Goodness, that was another thing that was hard for me to answer. Like an ideal student, really, let's do the English part for a moment. So an ideal student is really somebody who is, the parents and the student, they're very much ready to improve. Perhaps they weren't getting good results in the classroom because they were behind. It could have been COVID. They're a little bit uncertain. I love the kids who are super sharp and they want enrichment. I love that too. So for me, 11 years old, between 11 and 18, I know that's a wide range, but middle high school, someone who's like, I think I have it, but I can't understand some of these characters. I don't really know how to, my writing needs some work. I'm not sure how to edit my writing. It's just somebody who's like that. Like, I guess that's not very specific. It needs to be someone who's also, I like it when they want to do more than one day a week, because the one day a weekers they probably need less work. I like the ones who need a lot of work because then I can come up with more things for them to do. You'll have those students after a while, you're like, gosh, what is it that we're doing now? I guess I'm just sort of I'm like their teacher. I just come up with more things, but I like when they're behind, because then I don't want them to be behind, but I think
Right.
I know what's good for them, and they really just believe what you say because of your experience. Like, I wouldn't do this if I had no idea. So I'll suggest a book, and the parents are like, okay, good, we'll buy the book. I'm like, really? Wow, that's amazing. Like in the classroom, it wasn't like that. Like in public school, if you told parents, hey, buy this book so your kid can read it in the summer, they won't do it unless they are required to.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
so
that
yeah.
is that's not, and that's the difference too. I think sometimes with working with our students, one on one, is the parents are already bought into, okay, I really do want to get help for my child. Tell me what it is they need. And if you're suggesting they need this book, read this book, they're like, oh, okay. And they do it. They do follow those suggestions, and that makes it a lot easier. Tell me about a student that you've worked with online that was able to get some really great results.
Well, let's see. I'm thinking about actually made a video about this recently, but I want to say, can I talk about a math student? This is somebody I didn't work with. Let's talk about this one kid. So this kid, going into ninth grade, and he started working with my husband, and he was kind of a difficult case because he didn't see the value in math. He didn't understand why he had to like be diagnosed first. Okay, let's look at try these math problems and let's see where you are. Like he just thought you learn math for a year and then you don't need that for the next year. Next year you learn eighth grade math. Then there's ninth grade math. It's not like that. Math builds upon itself. So I'm like, I don't know. This kid's we're doing pre-algebra, and I'm like, my husband loves geometry and algebra 2 and even pre-calculus. So that would be like his ideal client. So this kid started out, and he showed up most of the time. He showed up twice a week, and like his dad really wanted him to work. And I could hear them. Like when you're busy teaching, you're not always like worried about what you're saying. You're like invested in the student. But I could hear him talking. I'm like, man, like my husband's such a good math coach. Like he's telling him, here's practical math, here's the value in it. And he did a lot better. And so like you can go and see his review. Like the dad was very happy about that. And so hopefully, I mean, he went from not really wanting to do math to considering maybe one day I'll do honors math in high school.
Mm.
And that was the whole point. He just moved from not doing well to making better grades to passing to understanding it. And we find out, oh, it's just his habits. Like some students have these habits, and people say, oh, they're lazy. It's just the habits they formed. Go home, take a nap, forget about homework, play video games. Those are over time, those are really bad. Those are bad habits. So
Mhm.
I think that was a major thing. And then we've had students who I think they did well in their SAT and ACTs because we worked with them. You have to be consistent. That's really what helps.
Yeah.
And it's fun to get the results. And I'm a little bit nervous every time they're about to take a test. Like, how did you do? Because we worked really hard on that. And sometimes they're like, I did good. Okay. They're funny. They don't always tell you how they're feeling all the way, but that's a high school kid for you.
I know. They and yeah, that's you just get the basic response sometimes from them. Do you have a way of finding out how they did do on their test? Do you chat with their parents or get the grade or find out that
Yeah.
way? Yeah.
It's a number of things. Some of them who are pretty good at communicating, they'll tell you, or if I think of it and I'll email them, they'll write back, or I'll log on. Some of them you have to say, hey, let's check your grades because we need to know where we are. The
Right.
students who have, when they have, like I was telling you about the schoolwork, when they have these complicated, okay, we're going to read this scene and analyze the text and find evidence, all that. And I'm like, okay, I can help you with this, but let me make sure I understand the assignment, because if I help you do it the wrong way, you and I have both failed. So
Mm-hmm.
let's work
Mm-hmm.
it out. So
Yeah.
they're usually honest, or the parent will tell us. Or often at the beginning, when we first have a student, if the student's like didn't do well on something, the parents tell us the truth, and you feel like, oh, that kid's embarrassed, just like how I used to feel with math. Like I would want to hide it, like, oh, I made a
Mm-hmm.
6 to 8 on the math test. Psh, that checks out. Oh, no, everyone
Yeah.
can get better, whatever the
Yeah.
subject matter is.
Yeah, that's so true. And you don't even have to be struggling sometimes to get better, but working with those kids that are there's just there's joy in both sides of it, because I get to work too with the
Mhm.
kids that they want enrichment, they want to be pushed, and then I work with the strugglers, and the strugglers, they, you know, they work through it and you get to be satisfied with that piece of it, and it is absolutely amazing. So if you were to give advice to tutors, other tutors who are in the position where you're at, they're thinking of, leaving the school system and going on into tutoring, and maybe they're thinking about doing in-person tutoring or online tutoring, what kind of advice would you give them?
First of all, they need to find other tutors. And I didn't have any at first. I thought, okay, people have said I can make money tutoring. I want to try that out. But it's been way more valuable. It just got so much better and more legitimate when I found more tutors. So you've got to stay connected with other tutors, even if some of them are super interested in making this a real business and others are just dabbling, but you got to talk to all those kinds to see what their experience is, because everybody has a
Mm-hmm.
cool resource. Everybody has a way of organizing. Everybody has a great idea that you can collaborate with. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I would say you have to really want to do it if you want it to be successful. Like I find that I'm doing little things each day to move the business forward, because like I'm the one who cares about this business more than anybody else in the world. So, the students, they want to do well, but I'm like, right now, I am a school and sometimes a counselor, but a motivator. Like you have to be, I don't know. I think you have to be ambitious and driven, because the ones that aren't, you know, they don't post on social media. They don't do it because, I mean, and that's okay that some people aren't ready to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be willing to learn, not just learn more math, learn more English, learn more science. That's your subject area. You're probably pretty good at it, but you've got to be open-minded to spending a little bit more money on new technology. You've got to be very strict on yourself. Like you got to be disciplined. Or if you're lucky, you have someone in your family who knows a lot about tech and a business startup, and they can be your support system.
Mm-hmm.
Like we knew a guy who he knew how to fill out the forms for LLC for the state of Georgia. So he showed us how to do that. And that helped. Like you just, buy him a pizza or something and say, hey, can you meet and talk to me about this? And you got to be willing to network. And by network, I mean, that might be you're sitting at home with your pajama bottoms and you meet on Zoom with someone to say, hey, I heard you tutored some people. Tell me how it went. And they will always tell you the struggles and the good and the bad. Because I had immediately the first lesson was make sure they pay you ahead of time. And I was like, well, why would I not do that? But you're hearing how like people are stiff for money. I'm like, well, I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen. But you have to be on top. I don't know. I feel like all this sounds really intense, but like it's true, because I don't have 10 people. I don't have principals telling me what to do. Thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just like a little robot, and I have to do all these things with some help, but you have to be motivated if you want to do this, because the kids will be really thankful and the parents will be thankful.
Yeah, the more organized you are with your business, and even just knowing how to run your business, everybody is going to then respect you at a whole nother level than if you're just like, oh yeah, kind of wishy-washy, or yeah, sure, I could take payment before, or I could take payment after, or take payment
Mm-mm.
these 10 different ways. If you just let people know like how you run your business, it just gives a level of professionalism to you, all the way. So with parents who are listening to this, and they have a child that is struggling with English language arts or struggling with math, what advice would you give them?
I would say don't hesitate, don't wait, because it's very stressful on parents to try to teach their children. I've learned that. Like I grew up, like my parents, they had that teaching mindset. So I thought, oh, all parents must enjoy teaching. If not, okay, why not? Like, just why wouldn't they? But we're here to do the parents a favor. And yes, it's a time commitment because you have to schedule with us and it is a payment plan. But you would be, you want your kid to be comfortable in school, but they have to understand that if I'm not doing well, I have to do something extra. I have to do something about it. You don't want to just get by, because then it's going to compound. You're going to do that with everything else in life. So even if you aren't sure, like, my kid's got a 75 and they're not doing that well in math, I'd say they need to try working with a good tutor for a few weeks at least, seeing if that helps. Sometimes you don't get immediate results and parents get worried, and you have to say, hey, believe me, I can see where your kid's going to grow. The tutor always finds out, because I don't think there's anything more valuable than one-on-one
Mm-mm.
learning, because you're really zeroing in. It's so great. Like, I have a student who she's a twice a weeker, and she has summer reading, and she's reading a book that she could probably do okay reading it on her own, but because it's talking about World War II and the Holocaust, and plus there's a few vocabulary words in there that honestly, when if you're reading by yourself, sometimes we skip. If we don't know what a word is, we're not patient enough to look it up. But with me, we
Mm-hmm.
can, if she's reading with a tutor like me, then we can slow it down and talk about what do they mean by that.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have the distractions of other kids trying to show off or throwing paper or asking to go to the bathroom. Those with the learning environment is enhanced when you've got either one-to-one or the really
Mm-hmm.
small groups, because
Yeah.
I mean it's just because sometimes that's all it is like a student needs to open up to a tutor and say, hey, I was too afraid to ask my teacher this in class because all my friends are in there and I feel like I'm the only one who doesn't get it, because I
Mm-hmm.
remember what that feels like. I've felt that way before.
Mm-hmm. I think we all have felt that way, like for sure.
Mhm.
And some of the stuff that the kids are expected to read and understand, if they don't have similar experiences of what they're reading, or they struggle with making mind movies, it's really hard to take a next level interpretation of that text and be able to apply that and just know exactly what they're doing. I just remember that was such a huge struggle for me. And it we as kids, we end up putting our self-worth into that. Like,
Mhm.
oh, well, I couldn't understand that. I'm not very smart. I'm dumb, right? We put our self-worth into our reading capabilities, and reading some of those higher level texts could make you feel pretty dumb sometimes. But it doesn't mean that you are dumb. And I think that's the thing with tutoring that makes it so beautiful, is that the kids can realize, hey, I can help you with understanding this, which is then going to help you understand other text that you come across. And having that one-on-one help at this level is huge. I just so wish I had somebody who could have helped me back in the day when I was in high school, going through some of, the tougher types of literature that teachers are expecting you to read and comprehend and understand, because there's so much value in it. So people who want to connect with you and they want to get started with you, where can they learn more about you, Jessica?
So there's a number of different ways. So one way is, one thing I do, and some parents have still found me, is my YouTube channel. So, and that's Jpez Tutoring. That's all. Like, if you go to YouTube, actually, you can just type it into Google and Jpez Tutoring. I put my website is the same thing. My email, jpeztutoring@gmail.com. I try to keep it all consistent. Instagram, although a lot of tutors seem to find me on Instagram rather than parents, but it just kind of depends on where or how people want to reach out. But and then tutors, that's a whole nother category. But if when I help tutors with organizing their business, there's that Facebook group. And then how else? There's lots of ways that most
Yeah.
people either email or call me to
Hmm.
get started, or message on Facebook. It's interesting to see, like, when I look at data I collect and it says, where did you find me? It's just across the board. There's like 5 or 6 different ways. And of course, word of mouth is one, but yeah.
That's great. And so, and also Jessica is featured in the professional freelance tutor directory. So you can always go there as well and just type in Jessica and you'll find all of her information showing up. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jessica. It was great being able to learn more about you and your business and what you do, and be able to share you with other tutors and parents. And you guys, thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for next